Welcome to the UK Dementia and Palliative Care Conference 2025 podcast, brought to you by Rowcroft Hospice. Recorded at the beautiful Buckfast Abbey Conference Centre in Devon, this series explores the critical role of dementia and palliative care in supporting those living with dementia. Across these episodes, we'll be sharing expert insights, real-life experiences, and innovative approaches to improving care. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Health technologies to support people with dementia, facilitated by Leonie Cooper, Digital Health Research Associate, and Dr. Rory Baxter, Research Fellow, University of Plymouth.
So my name's Leonie Cooper, and with me today I have Rory Baxter. So what we're going to do today is just to give you a very quick talk of the work that we do within the Centre for Health Technology at the University of Plymouth. So one of the things that we look at is the robot pets. Has anyone seen any of these before? Yeah, fabulous. So the work of our colleague Hannah Bradwell has done a lot of work on taking these technologies into care homes to see how they can support people living with dementia if they start making weird noises. Very sorry about that. But what we really found out there was that actually there is a massive disparity between what developers think people want from the technology and what they actually want. Okay, so the technology was taken in there, and in fact, Paro, the robot here, that's £5,000, actually did exactly the same as a £250 version. So where developers thought they needed to include all of this fancy technology, I think he's actually even got silver incorporated into his bodywork, which makes him very expensive. So we can have more of a conversation about those when you guys come round. So from that, as I mentioned, we identified that actually we need to have conversations with our end users. What do people want from the technology? And that's where, within the Centre for Health Technology, we've done projects such as the GOLD project. So the GOLD project stands for Generating Older Active Lives Digitally. And what we did here is we had a 3-year project. It was intergenerational, where we worked with older adults alongside younger people so that they could share experiences. Younger people don't know what it's like to be old, and older adults don't have all the experiences that younger people have with technology. So we ran a series of co-design workshops where older adults and younger people got to play with different technologies, find out what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it. And ultimately, our aim was to create technologies so as people were getting older, they could be more active, they could reminisce. And we also used virtual reality to help people connect with places and spaces as well. So the project went over a series of phases, which again, if anyone has any questions specifically about that, then we can go over that a little bit later. But ultimately, what we wanted to do at the end of the project was to create a toolkit that we could hand over to future researchers, future technology developers, and say, this is actually what people want from the technology. Okay, so we found out what they like about the headsets, what they don't like about it, how they want to use it. At one stage, we actually had a 103-year-old lady on a treadmill virtual reality experience where most people had said to me, there is no way the older adults will want to go on that technology. Well, actually, I couldn't keep her off it. She actually invited us to her birthday party. The BBC came along. She had a lovely time getting to explore national heritage sites that she wouldn't usually be able to attend anymore. So actually, what we've been doing on these projects is just having really important conversations with people, and not just the older adults, but the staff as well. What can we do to make the technology more useful and helpful that the staff can actually use it as well, so they don't just purchase it and it sits dusty on a shelf? So as we mentioned, we created a toolkit as part of the project, where it is now online, so you can scan the QR code, or if you just Google Gold Project Toolkit, it should come up. So yeah, essentially the toolkit just presents to people in hopefully a non-jargon way, explaining what we did and helping other businesses realise that they can do co-design work themselves. They don't just have to sit there and think, oh, what would an older person want? How about you go out there and ask them? So that's essentially what the website does. We have videos on there about how we did it. We include all of our data, which looks at what would motivate older adults to use the technology, what barriers they feel they have in place, where they think it would be more suitable. Some of them looked at us and said, I don't need this, I can go outside. But actually then they sat there and went, do you know what, one day I might be in a care home and I might not be able to go outside and do all of those things. And it was great that they were able to actually look into their future a little bit and how the technology might be able to support them.
So thank you, Leonie, for talking about gold and some of the work with the robot pets. I'm just going to talk a little bit about co-design and what that means, because it's a word that's been used a couple of times this morning, and it's becoming one that's increasingly important and popular within research and design circles. So, as Leonie mentioned, when referring to Paro, the seal you can see there on the table, that was developed without the awareness of what eventual users and purchasers might want. So it's at a pretty exorbitant price point compared to some things that do a very similar job. So it's often a problem where technology development is undertaken without consulting the users, and this can result in an assumption of what people might want. So if you think of phones typically designed for older adults, they tend to don't have a touch screen. They tend to have buttons that are absolutely huge to support with people with poor sight. But that's not applicable to every single older adult. So it's important to try and avoid the stereotype and the assumption of user needs when creating these technologies. And co-design is a methodology that tries to circumvent this difficulty by centering the design process around the users, by incorporating their input at every single stage of the design process and understanding and learning what they want from the technology and what it can be. And rather helpfully, there's a whole wealth and swathe of research from recent years showing how co-design can be so important for the acceptability and the accessibility of different technologies. And it's not just health technologies, it's technologies more broadly. So it's quite an important thing when considering any kind of design of technologies or other things as well. And I'm going to talk about the ICONIC project, and ICONIC stands for the Intergenerational Co-Design of Novel Technologies in Coastal Communities. So it's a bit more of a mouthful than gold and a bit more contrived, but this was a project set up to try and tackle digital exclusion in Cornwall and Devon through co-design. And again, like gold, we worked with intergenerational groups to co-design 4 technologies. They're listed down there, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about what they are just yet. But in a sense, all of those technologies were around supporting people's access to the environment, to the heritage, and to community resources, because these are all important factors for people's well-being. And certainly in Cornwall and Devon, there's a lot of digital exclusion, and these might be barriers to people being able to access this information. It has relevance for people with dementia as well, because often older adults tend to be digitally excluded, and that obviously goes for populations with dementia as well. And occasionally it can be even more difficulty. So we recruited a large number of participants of different generations. We had 57 of our older adults and 42 from the younger generations, and they took part in a huge range of intergenerational workshops with us, where we went through an iterative co-design process where essentially we worked through different stages and activities, including presenting different technology solutions. So you can see there one of our participants showing off an underwater drone he was operating because that was relevant to the underwater telepresence. So we wanted to see what people thought about these different aspects of technology. Then we can take those ideas, start to build a prototype, present it back to the potential users, get their feedback, and so on and so forth. So it's constant iteration through what we're developing. We're taking on board what the participants wanted, and we're able to eventually develop prototypes for each technology, and we're able to show off a couple here and over the lunch break as well. That's a bit more of a focus on the co-design side of things, but over the rest of the workshop, we want you to think about how we can use co-design to support the development of digital health tools for dementia. So obviously we have the robot pets here, and we have some VR headsets here. So the robot pets, that's kind of generally all about supporting people's to have better well-being through reducing agitation, anxiety, as Leonie talked through some of Hannah's work. And the VR headsets here are about remote access to heritage and well-being. So typically when you think of digital health, you might think of very practical things, but it can be a much wider, broader concept about supporting people's access to important health and wellbeing resources, and that's kind of what we got here. So whilst we're thinking about that, we also want you to think about the design considerations that need to be made for people with dementia as well as for carers, and what the potential benefits might be of these technologies or other technologies that would incorporate co-design. And also where, for example, some of these can be used, and how you personally might be able to use co-design in the work you're doing and with people that you might work with. That's about it for us talking.
Power wants some attention.
Exactly. Power's been squawking away in the background.
That's it for this episode of the UK Dementia and Palliative Care Conference 2025 podcast. A huge thank you to our sponsors, Majestic Holidays, Wallens, Amica Care, MC Hearing and Audley, and to Dementia UK for their invaluable support. This series is recorded and produced by iNarrator and proudly hosted by Rowcroft Hospice. Links to resources mentioned are available in the show notes. If you found this discussion valuable, please share it and stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, take care.